From there, we descended from base camp, got back in the car and drove around to the east side of the range, met our liaison officer and obtained our permit for Mount Edgar. Having heard that Johnny and Micah had spent a month out there and never really saw the mountain except for a couple occasions when the clouds would clear, I took it as a pretty good sign when we drove around to the east side and came around the sharp curve in the road, and in the fading light of the day was Mount Edgar with no clouds around it, and just got to spend like an hour there sitting and admiring this beautiful face. So before we had arrived to Moshi, we had caught wind that there was a closure issued by a construction company in the approach valley that leads to Mount Edgar. And on top of that, there had been a landslide that had taken out a substantial section of the road, making it impossible to drive up. And our liaison officer, he actually recommended to us that we get a very early start. So we arrived in Moshi at about 6 p.m., stayed up pretty late till about midnight packing our bags, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, Bruce and I caught a ride up the valley to the point where the landslide had crossed the road, which is at about 1,600 meters. Again, summit Edgar is 6,618, so about 17,000 feet of mountain from the point where we started hiking. And that was pretty daunting. He and I both had 6 days of food each, and it's super foggy, rainy, wet, pitch dark, and we're just walking up this road like somewhere up there is a really big mountain that we're hoping to climb. So for that, the first day, we had hired one porter from a local village, and just to sort of share the approach weight just off of our shoulders. We knew this was going to be a long one. And our porter was able to identify the correct side gully off of the main Yangtze Valley, and that's when we entered sort of the made famous by Johnny, Micah, and Wade, the death gully with all these loose blocks and real steep, scree sides, and just these precarious boulders glued into the cliffside with dirt.
Here's the bucked gully that everyone knows all too well about. Pretty dangerous hillside. Living through here as quick as we can. Porters are kicking ass. Porter.
And on the afternoon of the second day, we sort of emerged out of it. So we're now at like the upper headwaters of this gully, and the whole time as we're hiking up, the hillsides are getting smaller and smaller until a point where we could climb out of the gully, and now we're walking on this talus, open slope hillside. And we settled into a base camp at about 4,100 meters. We were camped below a parallel gully that I'm 100% positive that Johnny and Micah had explored to check out the east face. While our campsite was a safe place to bivvy for the night, the gully ahead, the path that we had to go to access the east face, was not at all a pleasant place. The gully was about 1,000 meters elevation gain, and so 1,000-meter long gully, and in the narrowest spot, it got restricted down to about 100 meters wide. And above this gully was 6,000 feet of the east face of Mount Edgar, and so it all funneled down into this one gully and sort of acted as the garbage chute for the entire mountain. So on the morning of our third day, we woke up before sunrise, and it was a beautiful, clear day. And from this point, we could look up this gully and see the east face. So what
do you think, Bruce? I think I don't like the snow. I think I definitely don't like that promised land on the top. Not the level surface mentioned.
So we spent about an hour waiting and looking at possible routes up the east face. And in that time, the sun rose, and as soon as the light hit the face, an enormous powder avalanche came off the face and ripped down the gully, well above where we were camped, but still like got the heart going. So yeah, we discussed our options for a while and decided to wait until the sun had cleared the face, see if anything else came down. And about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, nothing more had come down, so we packed up the bivy site and ran up this gully as fast as we can. Covered about 1,000 meters in elevation in 3 hours or so. And it's pretty obvious as we're walking up just the devastation that comes down this thing, huge avalanche debris. So cruised up this gully, and at the top of the gully, directly below the east face, we set up camp, and at that point we were free of the objective hazards. Next morning we woke up, and again as the sun hit the face, we're packing up camp, and parallel to us in this cirque that is funneling down into the gully that we had just ascended the previous afternoon, an enormous serac ripped off and completely flushed the gully. Watching that serac rip and totally flush the gully was the first sort of realization in my stomach that it was too close to the line. Like, it was just way too close, like, for my own liking. I mean, to make the decision to go up this thing and only really having half a day's time where it didn't rip, and just to be lucky in doing so, it really made me uneasy. Things improved for the next couple days. On days 5 and 6, we entered into the steep east face and enjoyed relatively safe climbing. Gear was pretty sparse, but really enjoyable, fun climbing. Thin, hard water ice 5 schmears, some pretty fun M6, sort of broken but really compact rock. On the afternoon of the 6th day, we crested onto the South Ridge and set up a bivvy, and we're done with the east face. I remember topping out and just screaming in joy and elation to be done with the hard climbing, but at the same time, you know, we were sort of entering this whole other side of the mountain and didn't really know, hadn't really been able to suss out any route options from there. The next day, we pushed onto the summit in deteriorating weather and topped out in probably 50-mile-an-hour winds, and again at this point it was snowing. Visibility had dropped to 100 feet or so, and Bruce and I knew that it was time to leave Mount Edgar. So on the same day that we summited, we were able to descend about 2,000 meters down into another gully, which in descending down into this gully we got lost again. Like, you know, it's we had an idea of one possible descent option, which was actually the only ascent of Edgar, but in this weather where we could only see 100 feet, we ended up walking out the wrong gully. Bivvied that night, woke up the next morning, and again just still in the fogs, couldn't see anything. Ended up walking out this heavily broken glacier, just like rappelling off of into one crevasse, walking 50 feet, climbing back out of it, traversing to the side 200 feet, rappelling back down into this crevasse. I mean, I bet we covered a half a mile in 8 hours or something. It was ridiculous. But as we got further and further down this descent gully, glacier, you know, started drying up, and we were walking sort of on the side of it, more on rock. Did countless rappels, left most of my rack there. Eventually, we were out of it in heavy snow on day 8, in the morning of day 8, and pretty hungry at this point. I'd only brought 6 days of food, and we're pretty psyched to have a beer and yeah, be done with Mount Edgar.